Greetings. Today we're going to talk about getting input from the user. So when we want to get new information into our program from outside, we use the input command. As a shortcut, we say we are getting input from the user. And what we mean by that is we're prompting them or asking them to type something in, and then we can store that value in our computer. So what we do is we'll prompt them with a message like this, and then you'll get to type something, whatever it is, could be an int or a string, and then your program will store that information and do something new with it. So the syntax of the input command is you have a variable. It's going to be a new variable. This is where you're going to store what the user typed in. You're then going to call the input function. And in parentheses, this is the message that the user is going to see. Because if you're asking the user to type something in, you need to show them what is it you want. Do you want, what day is it? How many lattes do they want? What's the weather like? Whatever information you're asking for them, you prompt them with the question. And that's what that message is. It's a string. So here are some examples. So the simplest example is day equals input quote, what day is it? So you're going to show the user the message, what day is it? The program's going to pause. And once they hit enter, the computer will take whatever they typed and store it into this variable. Okay. But you can also do a different variation. For example, we can make the prompt a string. So we just store it as a string. Right, here's my string. And then I use that prompt in the input function. So you just need any kind of string. We can make it a variable. And lastly, not as common, is you don't have to store it as a variable at all. Right, so here's my question. What is your favorite color? Just like this. Now this function is going to actually also return a value. So whatever this value that's returned from right here, from the input function, it's then going to be passed to the print function and get printed to the screen. So you wouldn't be storing it. It's just to give you another example. Let's look at a couple use cases for this. So here we go. The program has the code day equals input, what day is it? So what's going to actually happen is when Python executes that code, your program actually pauses. It stops running for a moment. So it shows you this message, what day is it? And then it just waits. Right, so you'll see you might see a little cursor here, asking the user to type something in. Okay? Let's say that then user types in Monday. When they hit enter, what's going to happen, if we go back up to this code here, is it's going to take this value and it's then going to store Monday into the day variable, which is why we see Monday is right here. So it's taking that information and storing it in the variable. Now, what can we do with that? Well, once it's stored in the variable, we can print it out or do anything we want with it. So for example, again, here's the code we had before. What day is it? It's Monday. Well, now, if we were to say print today is, comma, day, it's going to retrieve Monday, and it's going to print it out like that. So here is how we are able to get information from the user, store it in a new variable, and then retrieve it at any point in our program. Now, there is one catch about this. And so what I want to say, if we look back at this slide, is that when you have a variable, you need to think about what kind of variable it is. And so the input command will always, always, always give you a string. That's important to remember. So let's look at this example. Please enter a number, num1. Please enter a number, num2. So now we have two variables, num1 and num2. Now, what happens when I do this code and I print them out? Think about that for a second. What's going to print out? Remembering that input always gives you a string. Perhaps surprisingly, it's going to give you 33. And hopefully you would want 6. And the reason it's doing this is because, again, input always gives you a string, not an int or a float by default. And if you use the plus sign always combines or concatenates or squishes together two strings. So our solution that we're going to use all semester is you need to convert an integer, a string integer into an integer variable, and a float that is stored as a string into a float variable. So we have to do that conversion. And it's very straightforward. You simply put the command int in front of the input command. So int parentheses, and then your input, and then close parentheses. Int input, and then close parentheses. And what's going to happen is this variable right here is going to be converted from let's say quote 3 to be just 3. So when you do it this way, you're going to get 6. Now, these functions exist for all the different variables we might need. So if you know you're going to have a float, you use float. If you know you're going to have an int, you use int. And sometimes, if you need to convert an integer to be a string, you can use the string function. Now, these are basically, we call them sometimes casting type conversion. It's not going to permanently change the value. It'll just let you operate with it in that new variable type for the operation you're doing.